Hello UK, hello Turkey, and hello maybe Europe, who knows. I'm Bülent Büyükseyer and welcome to my very first live broadcast in English. Unlikely, but you might get that I'm not a native speaker and sorry in advance about my English. I'm guessing there are some viewers who doesn't have any idea what this is silly doing, so let me talk very briefly about myself and SmartTalks. I have been in business for over 22 years now, and as the founder of SmartStars Consultancy, I'm providing recruitment and HR services with my brilliant teammates both in London and Istanbul mostly. Coming to the Smart Talks concept, when I was thinking about what I can bring around with very valuable people in my network and what I can learn selfishly in the meantime, it came to my mind to design this concept. I hosted more than 10 guests so far, and they were those who made a difference in the business world, stood out with their entrepreneurship, or inspired people, and of course me. My broadcasts were in Turkish until now, but if you come across a recorded session on YouTube that might interest you, please let us know. We will prepare the English subtitles for you as soon as possible. As you know, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn now. Therefore, please feel free to ask your questions or leave your comments anytime. We will respond as quickly as possible. By the way, from now on, there will be at least one English broadcast in each month, and I promise my hosts will be just as cool as my guest tonight. Speaking of which, let's get to the reason of being here. We are on air again with David this time. Hi, David.
Good evening, Bülent. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Great. Good to join you, and very honored to be your first English podcast guest. So yeah, good to be here.
Likewise, and I'm very honored to host you. Thank you very much for being here tonight with us. And there are lots to talk, right? As a guest of honor, it's a good way to start the conversation. Who is David Sturdee? Maybe.
Sure. So I'm South African born. My father is from England. My mother is from South Africa. I've been working for Yum Brands now for about 13 years in the Middle East, out of Dubai, in Asia, out of Singapore, and then working in Europe, out of London. So been with them for a while now, mostly with the Pizza Hut brand. And yeah, I live in London now. It's great to be here. Obviously, working in Europe, not as much travel happening these days, as we all know. But super excited to kind of share a little bit of the story and chat with you tonight.
Thank you very much. And of course, we found a fancy topic for our conversation: a journey to C-suite, C-level. So. You gave me so many delicious cookies before our conversation during our preparation. So I have many questions to ask to you.
Sure.
But I'll assure you it won't be very. They won't be very difficult.
Great.
We will be talking about your career mostly, but on the way. As you told me before, there were so many lessons learned and spectacular failures as well. So maybe we can start chronologically. So why chase a career like this in a big corporate?
Yeah, sure. Good question. I mean, I can definitely share my story. I mean, every individual, every person is different, and what they're looking for is unique. For me, I guess there were a couple of things. One is, there's many reasons. I think one of the first ones is you can go big and then go small, but it's difficult to go small and then big. So, if you're working for a sizable business and a big corporation, etc., there's a lot that you can learn from that I'll, touch on in a moment. But if you go down the line and you take those learnings and you decide that you rather want to pursue another journey, it's my view that it's probably easier to then, scale down and go and do something that may be more, own operated or whatever it might be. Whereas if you start off that way and you kind of, operating, if you maybe exploring something on your own or in a smaller type environment, it can be difficult to then scale up again and then say, okay, well, actually now I want to go and see what it's like working for a big corporate. But that transition sometimes can be difficult. So the advice I give to a lot of people is start big and then from there, take your options, etc. And for me, I mean, I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
So I have never been a C-suite manager or executive, but I have heard or witnessed so many stories about this. Sometimes at some point you are deciding to move forward, Sometimes you can be lucky, but of course you are your intellectual level and your preparation is good as well. But what was the scenario with you at some point in your career? Did you consider about being a C-suite executive, or how did you become a C-suite manager?
So I think to answer that, I'd go back a little bit and say, and it's probably also an extension from your first question around like why go after a career in a business like this or a big multinational or whatever it might be, And there's so much value that you can get from them. It's almost like a how would you say, like a parallel education, right? Around how people work together and how strategy comes together and how to communicate and how to put forward ideas and how to influence, etc. And these big businesses usually, and specifically in the case of Yum Brands, who I've been very fortunate to work with some great people and who really value leadership. You get all of this kind of education along the way while you're working, right? And that I find has been so valuable. And that's again, you say why join and why do that? And I think that journey for me has always been, I guess, the focus, right? And I guess the career progression and as that comes along, that's very fortuitous. But I guess I'm not sure if it was ever maybe I had an idea that I would like to, perhaps get to that level or whatever it was, but I've always found probably focusing on kind of that journey and where you are and delivery and the current role has always been the best predictor of moving forward, right?
Exactly. So have you been always in operations organization in Yum, or how was your story since starting for working for Yum?
Yeah, it was always around. It was always in that, and certainly started off in that operational field, whether it was around operational solutions or whether it was around driving operational performance in across markets. It was always there. But I think the kind of the business changed quite a lot over time, right? And we saw that operations was quite a physical thing, and then obviously as things became more and more digital, a customer experience was no longer just a physical experience or whatever. It was a digital and a physical experience. And that's really where I think probably the role that I played started to and the job that I had started to broaden out a little bit, because now I was looking at now I was being involved in more technical parts of and IT related or digital parts of the business that before 10 years ago, 15 years ago just wasn't really there, right? And now the experience is this hybrid of physical and digital, and that role has developed as that customer expectation has developed, and that to me has been fascinating, and as that's opened out, I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah. And sure, for every level, not for just C-suites, you should have the muscles of transformation, change management, but it becomes more critical when you go on with your career. So I'm sure you have so many challenges that you transform, for example, digitally with your organization, with the people or with the process you're responsible for, right?
Yeah, sure. And especially in if you're working in a brand new startup, you may not have this issue, right? Because you've got no legacy issues, and you're straight into the latest technology and the latest infrastructure, and everything is just it's shiny and it's beautiful. The Pizza Hut brand is about 1958 we were founded, right? So we've obviously grown over the years, and it's great working for a brand like that because it's got so much heritage and people connect with it, and it's it's a rich brand. But on the other side of the coin is you have a lot of legacy issues, right? So then as this customer expectation is changing because there's disruption out there, right? Like the aggregators are changing things, even just the kind of if you order an Uber, just that experience around transparency and being able to see it and the ease of use, etc. Customers are changing their mind, changing their expectations. They're kind of moving a brand that's got this heritage into this newer area is quite daunting, and it's not always smooth, right? It can be painful, and I'm not sure if there's any silver bullet. It's really around, I think I've found, around just probably staying the course, and also you allow for it to be bumpy, right? When you're rolling out new technology, when you've got new ways of working, there's going to be a time of disruption, and especially people who have heritage or people who work for the brand for a long time there could be some adoption challenges, and you've kind of got to allow for that and say, we're going to go through 3 months or whatever it is, and we know there's going to be some noise and it's going to be some bumpiness, and we be prepared for that, and not turn around at the first sign of trouble,
Yeah.
But I guess in the journey that I've had, and especially in the UK over the last probably 12-18 months, has very much been focused on that. And there's times when you're in the middle of it and you're doing a big tech deployment, and there's so much noise, and things aren't necessarily working, and you want to kind of pull your hair out and wonder what you've done. But having that conviction to stay the course is probably the most important part.
Especially, exactly. And also, besides the digital transformation, there is a Brexit waiting. So as a head of all operations across UK and Europe, so it was another, or still being another challenge for you.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the beginning of the year, we said, okay, we had a year's extension, so now we got a year to figure out what to do, right? And then we spent all of this year so far dealing with the COVID crisis. So it certainly hasn't been great. I mean, I really don't have many answers on that. We're trying to do some contingency planning and figure out what's gonna, I guess the challenge I have to the team is what changes on day one, what changes on 30 days later, what changes 3 months later, and what changes a year later. Because then we can kind of sequence and figure out where we're going to go. But like all things, there's just so much uncertainty in it, and we hope that there will be some smoothness and that we'll get there. But obviously, at the moment, there's a lot of unknowns, right? Which I guess is part of the job, right? You got to deal with unknowns and figure out contingencies.
Exactly, especially in this era, right?
Totally.
Okay, so how can you prepare to a C-suite management role?
Sure. It's a good question. For me, I guess.
Question, I know.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways of navigating the world, and everyone has their own style. There was a couple of principles that I think I learned along the way that I value, right? And the first one was around nothing moves a career forward better than making other people look good. And this kind of principle, and it's a great way to operate in general, let alone not purely just for career advancement. But I've always valued this because it's counterintuitive to sometimes some of our more selfish instincts would be, if something's going well, how do we show that we're associated with a project, and how do we make sure that our names and lights and flashing up there and everybody knows that we're performing well, etc. So that sometimes can be the that first initial reaction as to how to operate. But the reality is it's completely counterproductive. And the more that you support others and you make others look good, and whether it's your boss, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's people that you work with, right? It's a strategy that over the long term just will never ever fail, right? And again, this is more of an ideal and something that I continuously need to challenge myself on. But I think that would be the first one that I would say. And there's so many examples of it, of how by doing that, the long-term benefits of how you build trust and relationships and how these kind of snowball into something, I guess, meaningful is important. Like I say, sometimes it's the opposite to how we would look at something, right?
Yeah. And sometimes, maybe this is my personal opinion. Sometimes you don't you shouldn't afraid to have mistakes, to make mistakes as well, because you learn so many things from your mistakes.
Totally
right. The affection, the area, how can I say, the results can be more critical with C levels, but sometimes you can make mistakes. We are people, not machines.
Yeah, sure. And it's everything that you do before that's going to set you up for that, right? And you're right. It's a difference between are you playing not to lose, or you're playing to win, right? Because if you're playing not to lose, then you can play very safe, and the appetite for risk becomes extremely limited, right? And that's kind of it's a self-preservation mode, but I'm not sure how far that will really take you. So it's that balance of how do you play to win, and when you play to win, there's risk, right? And you're going after bigger things, and as your career goes, the upside or downside of these kind of initiatives can become quite meaningful, but without genuine risk is not to be careless, right? I mean, to risk is to build contingencies and to understand, but also not to be afraid to say if this goes wrong, it's or at least put yourself in a position where things can go wrong, right? Because if you're not doing that, you're just not stretching and not pushing yourself enough for probably moving forward, right?
Yeah. Can you remind us how are you managing directly or indirectly at the moment?
How many direct and indirect reports?
Yeah.
So at the moment I manage a team of six really highly capable, great leaders, which works, I find, quite well now. Initially, when I came into this role, I had more than that. I had a team at one stage 9, and it's just, for me, I mean, there are probably of people with more with greater capabilities and who can manage 8 or 9 effectively. But I found managing 8 or 9 people was really, really challenging, because
exactly
you just can't give them the type of, because the role is effectively one of a coach primarily, right? And that takes time, right? It's you got to put time aside, and you got to invest in people, and you got to understand them, and really like I say, invest. So I did a bit of a restructure towards the beginning of this year and brought it into 6. And one of the key learnings I found is, at director level or whatever beforehand, it was probably okay to have, if you had people doing the same role reporting into you, would be quite normal. Like if you had, let's say, 3 or 4 field-based, managers that may be reporting in, then that was fine. I found with this, coming into this level, that it was more effective to have, I guess, a kind of heads of departments reporting in, as opposed to people that are doing the same role. It just became so much more efficient. Accountability was just so much easier. You give people opportunities to learn through these leadership roles. So I find 6 works quite well, and then obviously they have their own teams, and then it goes quite broad from there.
Yeah. I'm wondering something. I will ask you a mixed question, maybe 50% personal, 50% about business. But I think our viewers will relate to that. For example, you are coming from a management group that you were working as peers, So after that, you're promoted, and they are starting to report you, So you are not peer level colleagues anywhere. Anyway, so what was your case? How did you manage it? Was it hard? Was it challenging? How did you solve this? Were there any problems? I'm wondering these questions answer a lot.
Yeah, sure. So in this most recent one, when I started this role at the beginning of last year, I actually transferred internally from our Asia Pacific office in Singapore to our European office. So this probably negated a bit of that, but in the past it has happened. It's always a challenging one. I guess it's the transition is probably the most difficult part, and within 3 months a new normality has been found, and then you can kind of get there. I think what worked for what I find quite useful, the first thing to do was in my own mind to promote myself, right? Because sometimes you can get these job new roles can come in, and you can doubt yourself a little bit in it, and then just by you're saying in your own mind, okay, I'm going to promote myself now. Now I'm, giving myself the right to go and act, to go and do this new role, right? So what does that look like? What is the elevated thinking, or what is the the change in behaviors that need to happen now because of the new environment? And kind of that confidence internally to say, okay, now I'm promoting myself. Okay, so the company's promoted me, now I promote myself as well. I find is useful because that it allows you then to go into situations where there may be some challenges, or maybe a little stressful, people may be questioning, etc. But you can go in there with a certain amount of at least confidence, or being able to feel like you belong there, right? And you belong in this new role, because that's the key, right? And is really feeling like you belong there, and then the rest will follow.
Yeah. So I'm not just talking about your company you work for, but generally, is there really like Game of Thrones games on up levels?
Generally. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I think we're quite lucky at Yum Brands. It's a company that's really known for its culture, right? It's known for its integrity. It's focused on leadership, focused on development. It's focused on the how we do things is as important as the what we do. And this can sound like just something that's something that I guess is just something that's given lip service or whatever. But the reality is that it's a company that on the whole really lives by that. And that I think that we have a kind of unspoken rule in the business of no jerks, right? So that type of like doing whatever it takes to succeed, and dog eat dog and whatever, like that just doesn't really wash with us. And generally those type of people who can't, I guess, form meaningful relationships or partnerships with people they work in, invariably don't last very long, right? And I mean, I guess every company is different, and some have more aggressive cultures. I mean, we certainly don't. This shouldn't be confused with us saying that we don't aggressively go after something, or we don't set bold goals or whatever. It's just the way we do it. We tend to try and be more collaborative in doing it.
And this thing is so 90s, right? It's so old-fashioned now. So
golden gecko, exactly. That's old time, right?
Yeah. So as a C-suite executive, you are the advocate of the company culture and strategy as well, I guess. So how do you balance strategy versus culture, and how do you action? What kind of actions do you have to these kind of versus situations?
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, personally, I always went to what's the strategy part, right? Because that's great. You get to, be, conceptual, and then get to really engage on the, the mental horsepower, and go off and have these, put these great plans together. And in fact, when we were doing the planning for 2020, right? So at the end of last year, and, we put our annual operating plan together, and there was a lot of focus on that. And, it was a good plan. And then I went off to holiday to Australia to obviously escape the UK winter for a bit. And I was in Australia, right? And I had this real nagging feeling continuously around this plan, this strategy that we had, right? Mm-hmm. And I would go back and I would think about it, and I would think about the components of the strategy, and they always came about and felt like the right parts. But yet something was missing. I was thinking, when there was this feeling that this alone is not going to get us to where we need to be, Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, I read a really good book called The Culture Code. And then I guess I had that light bulb moment around, there was so much focus on strategy, but the reality is it's the culture that brings it alive. And it's, I don't know if you've ever heard that question, what would you rather have? Would you have the world's best culture or the world's best strategy? And after thinking about this for a lot, I think I would take the world's best culture any day, and I'll tell you why. The world's best strategy, and not to say that ours was the world's best strategy, but it was a solid strategy, right? But how many people had been involved in that? 6, 7, maybe. smart people and great people on my team and good people from UK from the US office and whatever, but it's little more than two handfuls of people, right? But culture is about thousands of people solving those problems on a day-to-day basis, right? And if they're pulling in the same direction, and if they're aligned, and if they drive that same passion and they're moving together, they're going to solve these problems way quicker than a good strategy will, because you're going to have people that are empowered, who are going in the right direction. Now, it sounds so obvious when you discuss it, but I wonder, in the majority of businesses, what the time spent between culture and strategy is. Or when I say strategy, even like strategy execution, right? And I mean, I would say I would be surprised if it was more than 80-20, but the reality, 80 on the cultural, 80 on the strategy. And so that kind of was a big wake-up call. And then it was right, well, how do you go after culture? Because it sounds like this soft thing, right? Like a strategy, you can really put it down and it's very simple, but like how do you build culture? Like, is that, it sounds like this very soft thing, but the reality is, like, if you want to do anything in business, you have to have a framework. And if you have a framework and you know what you're going after, and you know what you want to, what points you want to embed within a team, or what you want to focus on from a cultural point of view within a framework.
I have no answer to that, if you will be agree with me or not, but people are making the culture, so it's not fictional, but strategy, if it's especially on the paper, it's fictional in the most scenarios. So this is the difficulty. This is the challenge to integrate strategy to culture. So because culture is coming from down levels, but strategy, sometimes a group of old people are sitting around the table, and they are just saying, okay, this is our strategy. So
not too old, I hope, but thank you.
No, I'm still talking about 90s, not about you.
and it's a good point, right? And I think there's three, and again, really based on the that book, The Culture Code, which I highly recommend reading. There was three things that a team has, all the teams have from a cultural point of view, right? That there was this, so that the author went and did a lot of research, and they looked at highly performing sports teams, business teams, even jewelry, this gang of jewelry thieves that were operating in Europe, and they looked at all of these organizations that were just significantly more successful over a long-term period than their peer group, right?
Yep.
And then they went in and they started digging around, and they said, well, why? And I'm not talking about just having, one season better, like, for 10 years they were in the Super Bowl 6 times, or, that type of stuff, right? And there was three elements that they kept seeing come up in it, right? And the first one was that the members of that team, or that organization, felt connected with the organization, right? They felt connected and they felt safe. And not only connected now, but also when they thought forward, they wanted to, they could see themselves being connected with this organization in 12 months or 36 months or whatever it was, right? So that, like, how do you drive that sense of connection? And that's very personalized, right? That's how, you get an individual, to connect with something that's obviously, broader. So the first one was how do connection. The second one was around the teams that were highly successful had the ability to have vulnerable conversations. Now, the question is, vulnerable, why do you need to be vulnerable, etc.? I guess the opposite of vulnerable would be like aggression, or would be ego, right? So if you can have vulnerable conversations, you can have conversations like where you can admit not to know the answer to something, or to admit that you're having a challenge working through something, and that there's no ego there. The teams can come together and say, look, this is working, this is not working, I need help on this. And that ability, because sometimes, again, our initial action or thought might be to, I know how to do this, I got it covered, and to be kind of, ego orientated, but it's a real value destroyer. So being able to have that vulnerable conversations, to sit down and say, hey, I need help on this, I don't know what's happening, or whatever. And then the third one was around that the members of that organization were clearly aligned on where that organization was going and what steps it would take to get there. So if you kind of put those three together, you're feeling connected, the ability to have vulnerable conversations, and really aligned on where it's going and how to get there, then you can typically, that team starts to perform quite well, and the culture within that team becomes very strong and self-replicating, etc. So that's really what we've looked at, is how do we drive those three pillars. So again, it's not just this kind of airy-fairy idea, but there's three very clear deliverables that we can measure, how we can go after, we can do actions against.
Yeah, the organizations which apply these three pillars are usually the agile organizations. When we are seeing that more and more companies has agile organizations because they are not there are living organisms in the hierarchy, less hierarchy, and at the end of the day, a simple software engineer, maybe a junior engineer, is starting to understand the strategy. So every work that he or she does, he or she can link to the company's strategy very easily.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a great point. And then that being able to do that links to the first and the third point, right? It links to the third point being they understand the strategy and they know the role they play in it and the steps to get there. And then the second one is when you're doing that and you feel that you're playing a valuable part, you inherently start to feel more connected with that organization, right? So you're right. But the old typical hierarchy and top down, etc. Especially with the workforce that's coming into play now, right? They just have no interest in a very hierarchical, traditional, structure or organization, right? The impact that they want to play, the way they want to be seen and treated in the business is very different to that, right?
Yeah. Talking about workforce, when you became a top level manager, did you have to deal with the structure? Did you have to change something? For example, hierarchy, the groups, the people, the team. How about it?
Yeah, so I inherited a number of departments or divisions that weren't necessarily organized together beforehand, but luckily on the whole, we're really full of great, strong leaders, right?
Yeah.
So I did a bit of reorganization. But it wasn't a clearing house exercise, etc. It was more around streamlining it a bit, bringing the number of direct reports down to a manageable number, getting 6 heads of departments that would then have their be able to run their teams effectively. And there was probably more moving people around than there was around massive restructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were quite a few examples where there were good people who were in the wrong role, and then having 6 departments or 6 divisions that I could work with the different leaders on, we could really find out, okay, this individual has so many strengths, big cultural player has these strengths, this current role is just not suiting them, right? Mm-hmm. And then to go and find what's that win-win role, and there was I don't know how many, there were 2 or 3 times that we've done that that win-win scenario, right? And it's the question before making these moves, the question I always ask the person is how happy are they? Like, what's their level of happiness? Because invariably, if somebody's in a role and it's not working, it's usually not just the business that has the view that it's not working. Usually, that individual has a sense of it as well, and that can often lead to a lot of unhappiness as well, right? And then I always start the conversation like that. Where are you at? What's your level of happiness? And when somebody says my level of happiness is a 4.5 or whatever, well, life's too short to feel that way, right? So let's figure this out, right? Because clearly this gives us a mandate that we should go and make some changes because it's not working this way. So let's go now explore it and find some other ways. But I mean, that's probably some of the things that probably the I don't know if proudest is the right word, but that I truly value is being able to do that and really get those win-win scenarios, get the right people into the right positions, and then you just step back and you just watch that, you watch the magic flow, right?
Exactly. So there's another interesting question that I'm wondering the answer. for example, you mentioned about 7 or 8 managers are reporting to you, right? And they are managing big scales as well. So many people. They are motivating someone, and you have to motivate them who has to motivate their individuals as well. So, is it difficult to motivate managers, and they are not mid-level managers; they are big managers as well?
Yeah. If it's truly difficult to motivate them, then something has gone terribly wrong, right? And it's either the wrong person or their or the leadership style is just destroying value, and people are greatly unhappy, But the key is how do you how do you get that to go down? Because so for my 6 direct reports, we meet regularly and we understand we understand each other and what we're doing and what we value in our principles. But how does that go down further? And I can go and spend time with my direct reports and these very capable leaders. I can go and spend time with their teams, and I do from time to time and check in, but I never want to undermine them, right? It's their responsibility to run their team. So as much as I'll interact with them, I'll do that in I hope a respectful way, and allow them to effectively be the leaders there. So what we did quite early on is we defined the principles that as these 6 departments or divisions that came together, we defined the principles that we wanted to that we valued, right? And it was around, there was a couple of them around, we do whatever it takes to get it done, and we do it together. There's no individual behavior, right? We highly value moving quickly, and with that, we tolerate failure. We understand it. We embrace it when we have to. We came up with 4 or 5 kind of principles that we wanted to have as a team, right? And then we went back and forth. There's a lot of consultancy to this. It definitely wasn't me on a whiteboard writing all these things down in a management meeting, because that never gets any traction. But once we defined these 4 or 5 principles that we thought we valued as a team, we would then start every meeting that we had, and we would go and we would review them, and we would go through the 4 or 5 or the 5, and we would say, how are we progressing on these? Which ones are we doing well on? Which ones do we need to focus on? And then those team members, those team leaders, these 6 kind of heads of departments, they started doing it with their own teams as well. These are the points we value, and they would start each meeting by reviewing them.
Yeah.
And then I guess the second part, and just quickly to finish off, would be we really valued the currency of performance and moving quickly, landing things, getting stuff done. That to us was hugely important. And that rate of change, or that rate of action that was required was quite jarring for some at first, and it wasn't necessarily something that we're used to, and there may have been a bit of discomfort. But people want to be a part of a team that's successful, and it's painful to get there, and life becomes quite maybe challenging for 3 months. But once you start to build that momentum and you start to get some wins, etc., people really value this, and they forget the pain that went along, and then they start to embrace the change. And then that drives its own form of motivation, I find.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the organizations such as yours, so many things to do, big operations, big customer operations. So problems never end, So
yeah,
you have to embrace it at some point. So there's a question from one of our viewers. I think we partially answered that, but how about coaching mode when you reach management level? So I believe he or she, I don't know, there's an avatar here, is asking that, did you prepare for how to be a good coach, or are you using coaching methods to your team?
Yeah, and I guess it's quite personal in terms of what coaching means and how to do it. I think for me there was a few things. One was to be defined about it, because it's so easy when you start a meeting with somebody. How are you doing? And then you just jump into it straight away, right? So tell me about this. How's this project going? What help do you need, etc. and then you're into the back and forth of business before you know it, right? So the first step is just to be defined about it and to say, to either schedule some meetings where it's purely only coaching, or to say I'm going to spend at least the first 15 or 20 minutes on coaching and not get into it, right? And coaching is very different, because then it's purely asking questions. You know that you're not coaching when you're being more directive and giving direction, right? When you're asking questions, is a good sign that you're probably being coaching, right? Because coaching is around guiding somebody to get to a position, as opposed to telling them how to get there.
Yeah.
So one was being defined and setting time apart for it, and then the second was to really just rely on and to really go and have a question-based approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third, obviously, honesty is really needed in coaching, and the ability to have those honest conversations. And some of that comes with the relationship getting stronger, right? So really investing in that relationship and, getting to know and understand people and really who they are as people, and to know that they can trust you as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are, and then there's various different models of it, and some work well and some work for others. I like it probably a more natural one of question asking, of relationship based and finding a way. I think one of the things the challenge that's happened is the COVID crisis has definitely got in the way of coaching, because everything was a crisis and everything we needed to move quickly on, and we had to make all these decisions. And I was reflecting upon this the other day, that we almost needed to start drawing a line in the sand and saying, okay, how do we go out? How do we change our mindset from, we've become conditioned over the last 6 months to become highly transactional, to move quickly, and how do we draw a line in the sand and go back to, that balance of coaching again?
Yeah.
Because I can definitely see it for myself, and I'd be pretty sure, like talking to other people in various sectors, the way that we interact has changed, and there's value in it because we move quickly and we make good decisions, etc. But we need to also slow that down and go back to that one-to-one coaching, etc.
Yeah. Especially with COVID situation, you are trying to do this while you're at home, So there's a physical disadvantage as well.
Completely.
Yeah. Okay, so we were. Maybe you'll remember, we were talking about imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome, and what's got to do with being a C-level manager?
Well, exactly. I think it's got to do with being a human being, right? Like, I certainly, when I got given this role, and it was such an exciting opportunity, because I got to come back to Europe. I got to work in an exciting market in Europe. I got to lead these great teams. There was so much to do, and it was exciting, and what was meant to be, I guess, a really happy moment around this opportunity that came up. I actually found myself feeling quite unhappy quite quickly, and I realized, because I was I really doubted the ability that I had to go and do this role, right? And there's that gnawing feeling in the back of your mind. They're going to find out soon that they've made a mistake. They're going to find out that I don't have the capability to do this, And the more people that I spoke to, the more I realized that this was almost universally felt, right? People felt this. But it's not an easy thing to express, because our natural defensiveness is to say, put up this kind of this facade, right? And as soon as you put up a facade and you're not being yourself, then it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
So definitely that imposter syndrome of, they've given me this opportunity, but I'm not up for it. So, I'm an imposter and I'm going to be found out, So that I think was really quite a learning and quite an experience to go through. And like I said, I've coached quite a few people who have, in the last year and a half or so, and spoken to some peers who've also come into similar roles around the world. And that feeling has almost universally been there, right? And it's a complete value destroyer, because it stops you from, it can almost paralyze you, and it stops you from sometimes having the courage to act. So, like, it's something that I think you really got to get a handle on quickly. And yeah, if you're being promoted within a company, then you should really take comfort from that they know you, right? If you work somewhere for 12 years or whatever and you get a promotion, then okay, they probably know you better than you think, than maybe even yourself, right? Like, This is not just something that you've done 3 interviews and then got. And even when you're coming externally, you got to kind of get your head around it. You got to, like you're saying, that point, right? You got to promote yourself first in your mind that you've got this role. And the best antidote to it, I think, I found as well was get into the detail, right? Start to learn the business, start to learn the people, start to understand where the gaps are, start to separate the what is symptomatic and what is the root cause of this new business that you're going into. The more you start thinking about this, the more then you kind of, all the muscles that you have in terms of leadership management and otherwise start to come into play, and that imposter syndrome starts to probably go away a bit, so. But I guess that ties to that book, The First 90 Days, that we were talking about. I'm not sure if do you know it?
Sorry,
It's called the First 90 Days.
Yeah, there's a book or there's a webinar like this.
Yeah.
I was not a top level manager, but I was working for a BMW project in Turkey, and I was kind of unit manager. And this book they gave me as a gift,
Okay. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, this I highly value this book, and it's such a simple concept. I mean, you can read the book, and it's got all the and I recommend reading it, and it has all the tools and the tactics to do it. But the idea is very simple, right? What you do in your first 90 days will almost certainly define everything else that's going to happen and follow in that role.
Chronologically, like one day by day. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
And if you build momentum, and if you get some early wins, and you build the trust of your team, and you're gonna then set the tone that's how people see you, that's how people think about you, that's how people think about the team, and you're going to be known for a team that gets things done and moves quickly and impactfully and is focused and goes after the right things. And once you have that and you make a start like that, you're flying, right? And then you get this momentum and it keeps building. If you have a slow 90 days, a slow 3 months, and you battle to get a project together, a plan together, and you don't land some wins, the team is not settled, you don't bring them together, etc. It is extremely difficult after that to turn it around, because now you've started to build this perception, you've started to build this reality, and that if you nail it in the first 90 days, almost 3 years, 10 years down the line, you will see, what I did in the first 90 days was I can draw a line to this in terms of the direction, the intensity, the pace, the execution standard, whatever it might be.
It was a great thank you for it.
Yeah.
I prepared a final question for you, but I think this will be your first suggestion to read this book. My question was, give us some hot tips to become a top level manager. Cookie time. It's cookie time. Yeah. So the first answer was to read this book. So is there any other suggestion?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you say top level management, and that's kind of you to position it like that. I mean, the first tip that I would say is it's probably, the view of it is probably different, right? It's around, and it goes back to, making other people look good, which is more than that. It's about how do you serve people? How do you genuinely help and serve others, right? And I think if that's truly a principle, then it's probably less about the seniority and maybe the other stuff that comes with it, but more around how do you play that role in a broader sense with senior leaders, right? So I think that's really the first one, and we kind of touched on that a little bit. The second one, some of the best advice that I was given was around, once you join a leadership team, C level, whatever it might be, once you're in a leadership team, your priorities need to change, right? So if you're kind of just leading a function, then your priority is probably to that function. Once you join a leadership team, your number one priority is no longer to your function, your functions. Your number one priority is to the rest of the leadership team. It's to those who you're serving on that leadership team with, because by extension, that means the business, right? Your job now is it is of course to lead these functions and to support and coach and lead them. But your number one allegiance and priority must be to the rest of the leadership team that are around you. And this really changes everything, because then you're taking a more holistic business view on it. You're understanding that there are other business priorities, and there's give and take in that, and it really, those leadership teams that are tied and whose responsibility primarily is to each other, just seem to have much stronger, results than ones that don't. Right? And then your second responsibility is then to your leadership, is to your teams that you obviously lead, and then your 600th responsibility is to your career, right? Now, when you get that the wrong way around, and you get into a senior position, and your number one concern is your career, your second concern is how your team is your team primarily, and then the broader business afterwards. It's a complete recipe for disaster, right? So that really stuck with me, and I heard that probably 3 years before I got into this role, and it really stuck with me, and I was thinking about it, and it helped me navigate a lot. And again, this is an ideal, and sometimes we will, I fall back into maybe being too primarily looking after my functional teams, but then I have to pull back and say, actually, my real team is the leadership team, and then the rest come after that, So that's I think would probably be quite a big one, and a learning that I had,
Yeah. It was my question, but we have still questions from our viewers. One of them is from Typhoon. Hello, as everybody knows that upper managements have limited times and need energy more than other members to organize the duties. Actually, I wonder that how do you motivate yourself, and what's your inner energy source?
Good question. So I think I'll answer that in two parts. The first one around needing time. As a leader, and at any level, but specifically I think as you go up, if you're leading cross-functional teams, if you ever find that your time is genuinely really completely destroyed, it probably means you're doing somebody's job for them. So if my 6 reports, and luckily I've got I'm very lucky to lead strong leaders. But if I found that I had no time, and my diary was completely destroyed, and I had no time, and I was being sucked into things, etc., then I've learned to realize that this means that probably one of the people on my team is not fulfilling the responsibility that they need to, and then I need to take a step back and understand why that is, and then go to it. So that's, I think, in terms of the time wise, because it should never be that your life is just completely destroyed in terms of time management. I mean, yes, of course it's busy, and of course we have to put in some long hours, but it's got to be manageable. And if it's not manageable, it usually means something in one of your direct reports is there might be an issue there. In terms of kind of that energy source, I mean, I like to work in businesses that require a bit of, or markets or regions that require a turnaround, that may have lost their way a little bit, and I get an immense amount of satisfaction from working with a highly capable team and turning a business around, right? And seeing that improvement and that turnaround and how the results change, like that gives me a tremendous amount of energy. So I think that's really that real sense of purpose, because when you're working in a turnaround market or markets, there's a real sense of purpose around what you're trying to do, right? So I like to create that sense of purpose with the team, and then really just go after it and see those results come through, and that to me gives me a tremendous amount of energy. It makes me feel makes me want to.
And that was a great question. Thank you, Typhoon, very much, because I think everything starts with your inner energy. It makes you get up every morning. So thank you for this question, and thank you for your answer, David. Sure. And this is not a question, but we have a comment like this: world best culture, world best strategy. Yeah.
Sure.
And
it's a good debate. I mean, you need both, right? You definitely need both. I think going back to what we were saying, the question is always to challenge ourselves. What time are we putting into strategy, and what time are we putting into culture, right? Because we never want to go 100% on one. But I would almost, like I say, I think that there is, strong businesses probably have less challenge around this, but there's probably a corporate leaning more towards strategy, which can be quite counterproductive, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just putting this on the screen for laugh. Please read, David. Why I'm here, which suggests about talk. I don't understand this. There's a viewer here, who, she or he doesn't know why he or she is here.
That's a very difficult question to answer.
uh, we don't have any answer for that. Sorry.
I mean, maybe it's fate, right? Oh, this reminds me, right? Talking of fate, maybe fate has brought them here. You were saying, what are some good tips, and how do you advance a career, right? And I would be very clear in saying that luck plays a tremendous amount of a role in this, right?
Yeah.
Because we like to, usually when things go badly, it's not our fault, and when things go well, it is completely only us that's done it, right? Is sometimes the mindset, but this is not the truth of it. And exactly. and luck and opportunity is a huge one, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to identify opportunity and to use the luck that comes your way is so important, right? Like there's some of the the improvements we've had in business, etc. This has come along because there's been a new technology that we've managed to identify and to roll out, and it's a huge opportunity, and it's changed our business, right? Or changed the operating part of our business. And there's a certain amount of luck that this technology is now available, that I became exposed to it, that I knew it was there, etc. And I would always acknowledge that kind of luck or that fortuitousness that can happen. Mm-hmm. But the key is being able to identify it, and then more importantly use it, right? Because in all our lives, I think there's going to be whatever it is, a million pieces of good luck that's going to come our way, because that's life, and it's it's random. Yes, is how many times are you going to identify and use that opportunity?
Yeah. David, I can't. It's been already 7 minutes. I didn't notice that. Okay, let's. Do you have anything to say additionally? Or I don't have any questions, so it's about 1 hour now. I'm sure I exhausted you a little bit. Thank you very much for that.
No, not at all. I mean, it was great to chat with you. I mean, this is I guess some of the learnings or my take from my journey. But I think there's no necessarily right way. There's different ways, and this is, I guess, some of the lessons or learnings that I've had. But it's been great to share them with you. And I mean, I'm not sure of the value that your viewers will take from it. But if there is anything there, then I hope that it was useful. If there was any points along the way.
So, I will just tell our viewers one thing. David was a great guest from the very beginning. I met David accidentally like 2 weeks ago, and it was a great accident, I guess. And I just offered him once, and that's the rest of it. I didn't have to chase him. He was very on point, on time. He gave me so many good topics. And watch and learn, guests. Watch and learn. This is
called using your opportunities.
Oh, thank you very much. And I really appreciate that you have been here with us today. And thank you very much. Please don't go anywhere. I'm ending the broadcast, and we will be together for a couple of minutes more. Okay?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you for that very much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's for all. Thank you very much for viewing. And also, it will be recorded on YouTube and LinkedIn Live as well. If you have any questions, any comments more, we are very reachable. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely night.